Good morning. Happy Father's Day on this beautiful summer solstice morning. My name is Karen Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And as a member of the Music and Worship Committee, it's my pleasure to welcome you today to our Sunday morning worship service at First Parish, Plymouth Unitarian Universalist. Our theme today is how can we sustain this moment? And the service will include our traditional flower communion in coronavirus fashion, observation of summer solstice. The first half of our service is recorded and can be seen later on our website and YouTube. The second portion after the benediction is not recorded. That's when we share our joys and concerns. We have a pastoral prayer and quiet reflection before we break out into small groups for stimulating conversation and a little bit of social contact. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever you believe, wherever you are on your spiritual journey today, come walk with us this hour. Our worship service will now begin with the call to worship, which is from General Order number 3, delivered in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865 by General Gordon Granger. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them is now that of employer and hired labor. Please join me in turning to number 38 in your hymnal, or see the words on the screen. Our hymn, Morning Has Broken.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of a new day.
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in reciting the words to our chalice lighting. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. My name is Jen Kanzi Eaton, and I'm going to lead us in a summer solstice ritual. But I'll begin with the words of Henry James. Summer afternoon, to me, those have always been the two most beautiful words in the English language. So, summer solstice is upon us, which means we are at a moment of the sun's zenith and strength. We are also at a moment in our society where our acceptance and understanding of the plight of Black and Brown Americans are also at its zenith. But after the longest day comes the waning of the year. Reminders to keep the momentum of this movement is vital. Soon the news cycle will shift. More of us will return to work, and we will be distracted by the spike of a second wave of COVID-19. We also may become weary. So we need a reminder of this time when the light shines so bright on the injustices faced by people of color. This time when people and entities that have never had the phrase Black Lives Matter in their mouths a mere 6 months ago. So we've asked you to choose something from outside, something at its fullest. If you do not have something, you can picture it in your mind's eye. We will charge it with the power of this moment as a totem. So we may use it to remind ourselves of this watershed, to recharge us when charge us with the urgency of now. You hold the item in your hand or in your mind. Look upon it. Notice its features. Think of how it represents this time of blooming or fruiting. On this weekend of the summer solstice, on this weekend of Juneteenth, we charge you with the power of a light that shone so bright that those who would not see could no longer ignore it. This reminder of the persistence of life, please remind us of the persistence needed to create true and lasting change. We call upon the powers of the gods and goddesses of equity and justice in their many names. Asteria, Greek goddess of equality, Forseti, Norse god of justice, and of course, Lo, the sun god, the Celtic sun god and ruler of perseverance. We humbly ask for favor during these days of uprising, to have the fortitude to keep our hands on the plow when we tire, and our voices raised in song when we are weary. So mote it be.
Reading today is entitled The Deep Well of Black Lives by Reverend Christian L. Harper. On August 25th, 1619, the ship the White Lion arrived at Point Comfort, now known as Fort Monroe National Monument in Hampton, Virginia. The ship contained enslaved Africans. This is the first recorded arrival of Africans in America. This poem was written to commemorate the 400th anniversary last summer of the arrival of the first slave ship. How do we mark that first day, that hour, that minute, the White Lion could never fully embrace its progenitors? How do we mark that day, that hour, that minute that foreshadowed the centuries of degradation, violence, of attempts to separate the soul and spirit from the deep well of Black lives? How do we mark that day, that hour, that minute, 400 years ago, when the first drop of African sweat commingled with the earth's warmth, planting the seeds of a new culture, a new resistance and resilience. So today we will ring bells of sorrow, bells of grief, bells of atonement. We will ring out the ghosts of those lost in the middle passages, lost to the whips and deprivations.
I know that Karen has some bandwidth issues in her Zoom, so sorry that that reading was cut short. We're moving to our musical reflection. And you see this, this is a short text. I'm going to sing it through once to introduce it to all of you, and then I want everyone to sing it 3 times. This is, we might say, an affirmation. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I invite you, when you're singing it, to allow the power of your voice to burn away any doubt. Here's how it goes. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Please join me. We're going to do it 3 times. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Last time, you may choose to close your eyes. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
Good morning again. I'm going to offer the reading again. I know there were a couple of places where Karen's voice cut out and we did not hear it. So let me read the poem to you again. How do we mark that first day, that hour, that minute, the White Lion docked at a point that would be of no comfort to the 20 enslaved Africans chained in her bowels. Heralds of a coming storm of millions whose bodies would break through soil and rock to build an America that could never fully embrace its progenitors. How do we mark that day, that hour, that minute that foreshadowed the centuries of degradation, violence, of attempts to separate the soul and spirit from the deep well of Black lives? How do we mark that day, that hour, that minute, 400, now 401 years ago, when the first drop of African sweat commingled with the earth's warmth, planting the seeds of a new culture, a new way of life, a new heartbeat into the fabric of a new world? When the roots of freedom sparked deep underground and spread from generation to generation, blossoming with resistance and resilience, so today we will ring bells of sorrow, bells of grief, bells of atonement. We will ring out the ghosts of those lost in the Middle Passages, lost to the whips and deprivation, lost to the lynchings and the bullets, lost to the prisons and the chains of racism. Today we will ring bells so that tomorrow we may ring in freedom, ring in liberation, ring in peace. That poem was written by my colleague, the Reverend Kristen Harper, who is the minister of our church in Barnstable. On June 19th, 1865, almost 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was put into effect, the last group of Black slaves were set free when the Union Army arrived in Galveston, Texas. It had been almost 250 years, nearly a quarter of a millennium, since that first ship carrying enslaved Africans landed in Virginia. As our call to worship, I asked Karen to read the first part of the proclamation given by General Gordon Granger. His proclamation goes on to state the following: the freedmen are advised, of course there were no women freed, right? The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. That's how we like our people of color, or anyone who's different from us. People of color, women, queer folk, those with disabilities, we like them quiet, hardworking, and well-behaved. But I ask myself, and I ask you this morning, is that a proclamation of real freedom? There are lots of freedoms enshrined in our Bill of Rights, the first several amendments to the US Constitution, and I don't think any of them characterizes freedom as staying put, being docile, and well-behaved. And what are the odds that slave owners in a devastated Southern economy are now going to pay their former slaves a decent living wage? We all know how that turned out. One of the features of the white supremacist culture that is deeply embedded in our society is that we white folk can dictate and define other people's behavior and their lives. And this doesn't only apply to people in this country. We have somehow set ourselves up as the world's police force. We grant favors to the countries and to the people that follow our rules and behave as we would have them behave. And we punish those who don't, especially those nations and peoples who aren't appropriately deferential to us. I hope it's taught in schools today, but I don't remember learning anything about Juneteenth when I was in school, or the massacre and destruction of a thriving Black culture in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is the privilege of a dominant culture to suppress and silence the voices, the histories, the pain and struggle, and the dreams of any who are considered to be outside of the circle of privilege. Here in Plymouth, we have the added responsibility of learning to understand more deeply the complicated history that we have with the Wampanoag and other indigenous tribes that lived here for thousands of years before the arrival of our Pilgrim ancestors. And then we need to determine what we're going to do about it all. Educating ourselves is important, but action needs to follow from what we have learned and reflected upon. These are such difficult things to explore and to talk about. I know how hard it is to shine the light of this summer solstice on ourselves, our culture, and our privilege. It's hard to look at the marginalized and oppressed people in our midst and know their stories, their struggles, and their joys. But if we are going to save our society and our planet, we have to see this as a moment of reckoning. The self-examination and reflection that we will be engaged in needs to be done with the spirit of inquiry. We need to treat ourselves with open minds and hearts and treat ourselves non-judgmentally. Our work here, as I see it, is not about casting blame on ourselves. It's about discovering deeper truths and taking responsibility for what we need to do to bring healing and to move forward in the light of this magnificent summer solstice season. This morning, this summer, there is an explosion of this bright yellow yarrow outside my living room window. It's taken over almost half the garden there, this little strip, and it's just like, pulp. I've got some here, as you can see. And they're going to be my talisman, as Jen described in our summer solstice ritual, something that will remind me of this time and the commitment we are making to finally do something about anti-racism and anti-oppression. As nature explodes around us with miraculous growth, it's important for each and every one of us to ask ourselves how we want to grow. This pandemic, this season of isolation, can be our time to go within, to examine our lives more deeply and discern who we want to be when a new spring and summer finally emerge. Now, I know we could think it a bit sad, I know I do, that the sun is now at its zenith and will begin to wane after this weekend. The days, believe it or not, are going to start to get shorter. We've just like begun, it seems. But that doesn't mean our spirits and our commitment to the work of justice making and peacemaking has to wane as well. And we will be on this ship together, supporting each other with gratitude and compassion and hope throughout this journey. Since it's the end of the church year and I'm a little fried, I have found the words of the Reverend Elizabeth Tarbox to be able to say so much more than I can to all of us right now. So here is her essay, Legacy. The world is full of blessings. I have a home, a family, good fortune, good health. I have a job, a wonderful church family, and people whom I admire and respect to share my work. I have a place to go with my weight of disappointment and water to bathe my hurts. I have the vision of sunrise over the ocean every day, and gulls whose voices chorus my song, a choir of chanting whenever I want it. I have memories. I have a heart for breaking and a melting fire in my blood to fracture my sanity and cause me to lie on the floor and cry when I see children hungry, children dealing drugs, children watching violence on television and in their homes. I have a pillow to catch my tears, voiceless trees to monitor my coming and going, and the wind to sing the requiem. I have politicians in white shirts and striped ties who keep guns in the hands of boys in blue jeans and t-shirts. I have drug lords in Cadillacs to keep crack babies in slums. I have poetry and ocean to remind me of the goddess, and the goddess to remind me of AIDS and prejudice. Well, I refuse to lie down and be good, she writes. I will not heal up neatly, sutures in a row, no scars. No, I will not. I will shout out that I am here and hurting, and I will demand of life that it return my shout decibel for decibel. I will speak of justice and kindness and beauty and truth. And I will try bravely, though I am a coward. And I will honor wisdom, though I am a fool. I will find other broken people with divinity shining through their pain to remind me that the human spirit is hard to defeat, that the world is young yet, and we are just an idea, that love is not forever, but a little love once in a while is worth the risk of keeping the door of our hearts wide open. And I look for goodness, and I know it when I see it, and I see it in all of you, and your children, and your dreams. And I can never be grateful enough. Amen, and blessed be. Please join in singing our closing hymn, Come and Go With Me. The words are on your screen.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. They'll be singing. Get ready. Here we go. They'll be singing in that land. They'll be singing in that land. They'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. Let me hear you where I'm bound. They'll be singing in that land. They'll be singing in that land. They'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
As we weave together all the elements of today's service, I want to remind people, and for folks who are not part of it, have not been part of the congregation regularly, that what we usually do on this Sunday, the last Sunday, official Sunday of the official church year, is we do a ritual called flower communion, where people are asked to bring in a flower or a plant, and we create an altar space in front of the pulpit with all of the flowers. And then at this time in the service, as we move from the benediction into the postlude, people are asked to come and to take with them something that they did not bring themselves. So it is an exchange and a communion of people in the congregation giving something to each other. And so we are going to move into that ritual in a virtual way. Several of you have submitted images of yourself out in your gardens or in nature or with flowers, and that will be our benediction and our postlude, that you will bless each other with the wonderful gifts of summer that are part of your lives.